protesting against the injustices in the world and standing for human rights, trying to create a better change across the world. We've been here since Sunday. Other groups have been set up since the 15th of October, and you've probably seen in the news the ones that in London, Wall Street, and various other places. As I said, there are 4,000 cities. I'm going to read a part of the statement which was issued over CNN News in America by the Wall Street Group, covering some of the issues and what we are about. As we gather together in solidarity to express feeling of mass injustice, we must not lose sight of what brought us together. We write so that all people who feel wronged by the corporate forces of the world can know that we are your allies. As one people, united, we acknowledge the reality that the future of the human race requires the cooperation of all its members, that our system must protect our rights, and upon corruption of that system, it is up to the individuals to protect their own rights and those of their neighbours. That a democratic government derives its just power from the people, but corporations do not seek consent to extract wealth from the people, and that no true democracy is attainable when the process is determined by economic power. We come to you at a time when corporations which place profit over people, self-interest over justice, and oppression over equality run our governments. We have peaceably assembled here, as is our right, to let these facts be known. They have taken our houses through illegal foreclosure processes, despite not having the original mortgage. They have taken bailouts from taxpayers with impunity to continue to give executives exorbitant bonuses. They have perpetuated inequality and discrimination in the workplace based on age, the colour of one's skin, sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation. They have poisoned the food supply through negligence and undermined the farming system through monopolisation. They have profited off the torture, confinement, and cruel treatment of countless non-human animals and actively hid these processes. They have continuously sought to strip employees of the right to negotiate for better pay, safer working conditions. They have held students hostages with tens of thousands of pounds and dollars and any other currencies of debt on education, which itself is a human right. They have consistently outsourced labour and used the outsourcing as leverage to cut workers' healthcare and pay. They have influenced the courts to achieve the same rights as people with none of the culpability or responsibility. And they have spent millions of pounds, dollars on legal teams that look for ways to get them out of contracts in regards to health insurance. They have sold our privacy as a commodity. They have used the military and police force to prevent the freedom of the press. They have deliberately declined to recall faulty products, endangering lives in the pursuit of profits. They have determined economic policy despite the catastrophic failures that their policies have produced and continue to produce. They have donated large sums of money to politicians supposed to be regulating them. They continue to block alternate forms of energy to keep us dependent on oil. They continue to block generic forms of medicine that could save countless people's lives in order to protect investments that have already turned a substantive profit. They have purposely covered up oil spills, accidents, faulty bookkeeping, and inactive ingredients in the pursuit of profits again. They have purposely kept people misinformed and fearful through their control of the media. They have accepted private contracts to murder prisoners even when presented serious doubts about their guilt, and they have perpetuated colonialism at home and abroad. They have participated in torture and murder of innocent civilians overseas, and they continue to create weapons of mass destruction in order to receive government contracts. To the people of the world, to the people of Leicester here now, we are the General Assembly, occupying Leicester High Street in the centre. We urge you to assert your power, exercise your right to peacefully assemble, occupying public space, create a process to address the problems we face and generate solutions accessible to everyone. To all communities that take action and form groups in the spirit of direct democracy, we offer support, documentation, and all the resources at our disposal. Join us and make your voices heard. Thank you. I'm now going to pass you over to Stephen, who is part of the Socialist group against the cuts. So he's got a few words to say on that. So give a big hand for Stephen.
Thank you. I'm here with two hats on, if you like, because I'm a member of the Socialist Party, but I'm also a member of a broader group called Leicestershire Against the Cuts. And we are in full solidarity with Occupy Leicester and with the Occupy movement. We fully support the aims of the movement to bring to people's attention the fact that there is an alternative to what we have at the moment. Because what we have at the moment, as the previous speakers already explained, is a very limited form of democracy. In fact, we don't really have a vote over the big decisions that affect our lives. We don't have a vote over what happens with the banks and with jobs and with the economy. We live in a dictatorship of banks and big businesses. We live in a world where there are 1,200 billionaires on a world scale whose total wealth is $4.5 trillion. That is actually more than the entire national income of Germany, which is the third biggest country in the world. When such a small number of people have that much wealth, they also have massive power. Because they're the ones who make the contributions to the political parties who get elected to government and carry out policies in their favour. In fact, in some countries, we're already seeing that sham democracy being bystepped. In Greece and in Italy now, we have governments made up of so-called technocrats. This is the term that has been given by the media, where we don't have elected politicians running the government. We have economists and bankers and people who are directly representing big business and the banks. And the reason those technocrats are in power is because they're putting in policies of savage cuts to the living standards of ordinary working people. Savage cuts to public services. Just as we're seeing in Britain, but perhaps on a larger scale. And we see the ridiculous situation in Greece, where the Prime Minister of Greece had the temerity to say, why don't we let the people of Greece have a vote on the issue of the cuts that they were making in their public services, which caused huge amounts of alarm across the capitalist world, in the EC and amongst the bankers. The last thing they want is people to have a vote about those cuts, because they reject those cuts. So instead, they replace the government with these so-called technocrats, emphasising that the democracy we live under today is very limited. I agree with all the points the previous speaker said about what was wrong. And the question is now, what do we do about it? I admire the people here, the small band of people in Leicester who are occupying the street in Leicester, despite the cold, to make their point. And I think it's a growing movement, because more and more people are beginning to realise that the decisions being made are made on behalf of the bankers and the super rich, and that we need an alternative to that. We may not all agree on what the alternative is or how to get it, but at least this is beginning a dialogue and a discussion. I think it's part of a change in the situation in this country, because on the 30th of November there's going to be a strike of public sector workers. This is going to involve 3 million workers across the whole of the public sector, in the universities, in the schools, in the councils, in the health service, in government departments, many departments of the government. And this will be the biggest strike this country has seen since 1926, when a general strike shook Britain. And that, to me, shows a significant part of the movement. We need to involve young people in looking for an alternative. We need to go to the students. We need to go to the unemployed. But above all, the people who have the clout in this society are workers. And that strike on the 30th of November is the beginnings of a fight back. It's a fight back against the cuts in public services. There's leaflets if you want to see what it's about over there.
Don't need no leaflets.
Okay, it's about...
Would you agree?
Yeah, but I'm in the middle of a speech. I'll do 2 minutes. No, but I'll talk 2 minutes. Give me 1 minute, all right, and I'll finish speaking. Okay. Anyway, just to finish up. that I think this is the beginning of a movement. I think it's just the start. I think on the 30th of November, when 3,000 striking workers march down High Street from the top of High Street, past this occupation, we will see a coming together of both those strands, of young people looking for an alternative to capitalism, and of workers looking for an alternative to fight back against the tax on their pensions and their living standards. And I think, you know, I applaud what's going on, and I think this is the beginning, and good luck to you.
You put me off a bit there, that guy.
Thanks. Good job.
One,